Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's ANA webinar, Effective Outreach in Social Media. A little about the Administration for Native Americans before we begin. ANA promotes self-sufficiency for Native Americans by providing discretionary grant funding for community-based projects and training and technical assistance to eligible tribes and Native organizations. And if you'd like to learn more about ANA, you can visit them on their website listed there on the screen, www.acf.hhs.gov/programs/ANA. And all of the social media and outreach tips that you'll see previewed today are designed to benefit the tribes and Native nonprofits that ANA serves. So just a little introduction in today's topic. In this webinar, we're really looking at answering the question, how can social media improve the ways we connect and communicate with our communities? So, all of us here, we're working with some type of Native community, whether it's in your tribe or in your, a community that your nonprofit serves. And social media can enable us to connect with them in more meaningful ways, to have a two-sided communication channels, and to really fine-tune our services into what we learn about our communities. So what it takes to do it right, it really takes a commitment to maintaining a conversation, right? This is a two-way channel, to keeping content fresh, so that people know that your account is not dead. If you only post once a month, not only will people think that you're inactive, but the social media platform will actually penalize your page for not having fresh content. And so, on the news feed on Facebook, for example, that algorithm is going to prioritize accounts that post frequently with effective interactive content. And so you need to keep posting in order to maintain your relevance and your position on people's radars. And a commitment to learning and improving, specifically based on data. So using actual metrics to fine-tune the way you're doing things. And this might take responding to direct messages in minutes, especially on a platform like Twitter. Posting, we're talking about 5 to 14 times per week. That might be a lot for some people, but for some organizations, that's minimum. And also looking at data monthly. And so what we can see here is that this is something that will take time. And so having a strategic plan in place will keep you from putting in a lot of effort without any real output. Just some context, this information is a little dated, but still pretty relevant. Facebook, and we see here in Hawaii, and I think is the case with most of our Native communities, is the most popular, especially amongst broader age groups. So you can see that the average age ranges from 18 to 49. So you see a lot of the parents' generation in this medium. You even see a lot of kids nowadays trying to leave Facebook because they don't want their parents and grandparents to spy on them. So but it is a good way to reach a broad audience, and really a majority is female, which is very interesting, and which I actually see in a lot of our metrics as well. And you can see that Generation X, that older generation, spends almost 7 hours per week on social media, and I would guess that it's actually a lot higher in a lot of communities. Instagram is another platform. Again, these are just two random examples, but you can see here that 90% of users are under 35, and of course that's changing, and something else will come and take its place. But the point here is that new social media platforms are popping up all the time, and so it's important to have a clear strategy that you can apply to any new platform that comes up, right? You definitely want to wait for it to hit critical mass before you start investing your time into a new platform. We've seen a lot of social media platforms that rose and died pretty quickly, but then there are the big ones that stick around. And so, a good strategy will allow you to adapt. And so this is why ANA recently created its new Outreach and Social Media Toolkit, which is a free PDF that you can download from their website right now if you want. It's located in the ANA Resource Library, and I'll be presenting more information on how to access that later. But a lot of this presentation will be structured around this toolkit. It'll be recorded, and when you do use the toolkit later, you can refer back to the recording of this webinar for some help on how to integrate that into your social media and outreach strategy. So just for some context, before you start, you really ask yourself why you're doing this. You don't want to jump into anything like a lemming just because everyone else is doing it. Although it is important to stay relevant. But I think for us, monitoring our, our services and communities and trying to do a lot with sometimes few resources, it's really important to be focusing on strategic campaigns so that we're using our time effectively. And so you don't want to do it just to get likes, right? A Harvard Business Review, a very comprehensive marketing study in 2017 found that merely liking a brand on Facebook didn't change the behavior or increase purchasing or actions by any customer. So it wasn't just liking is just not enough. You have to actually connect that with real outcomes that make sense for your organization. And that's really where modern business marketing strategy is pointing, and also how we can integrate that into our projects. So a typical example of a social media objective might be something like this, right? We're going to create 9 posts with 20 or more likes each in the next week or something. But that doesn't really have any specific relevance to the kind of work we do, right? These are metrics that make sense for Facebook. Like Facebook wants to see you making posts and generating likes because it means that you're interacting with their content, which means that you're seeing their ads, and ads is how they make money. So these are metrics that make sense to the social media platform. But for us, like, how does this really translate into our, the type of projects that we're trying to promote? A better example might be something like this. 10 new people will learn about our organization this month, right? So this is an example of a goal that's, and a social media goal that's focused on awareness. We're going to make new people aware of our organization. And if we're a new organization or entering a new community, for example, or maybe launching a new project, this might be really important. Another type would be a sales or action type of objective, right? This one here, focusing on a short-term campaign, online and social media will drive 15 RSVPs for next month's event. So, in this case, we're having an event, and maybe we have a little link where people click on that to register for the event, and we can use that information, that contact information that they registered with, if they opt in, to contact them about other stuff in the future. But in this immediate short-term campaign, we're really looking for RSVPs. And of course, if people are sharing that post online, it's more likely more people will RSVP. Another example is one like this. Posts on the state of Native Hawaiian education will spur conversations among our followers and be shared at least 5 times, right? So this one has the share metric, which is specific to certain social media platforms, but it's also has a specific type of social activity that you're trying to facilitate, which is these types of conversations, which we can assume have something to do with this organization's mission. And this is a example kind of based on the loyalty, right? That people who already know about your organization, who are already following the work you do, are staying active and excited about what you're doing, and they're continuing conversations about issues that you're trying to raise in the community. So the social media toolkit has some worksheets that can help you develop these things. This is an example of a worksheet in the first chapter that will help you define these goals and stick to them. Another worksheet in section 1 is about describing your organization. And so it's all about distilling the essence of your organization into a very short elevator pitch, like a micro elevator pitch, really. A dumbwaiter pitch? I don't know. So you know, it's talking about like if you bump into a friend you haven't seen since childhood, how would you quickly explain it? You know, what are some of your core competencies? In one word, what is your organization's essence? And then finally putting it all together into a very short, concise paragraph that you can use, you know, on the bio for all of your different social media accounts. The next step is knowing your audience. Um, So the main thing to remember with social media is that it's a conversation, right? A conversation has two sides, and in this case, you know, it's kind of a conversation with many people. Like you're in a room facilitating a group conversation. You want to tailor the message to your audience. Don't just speak, but also listen to what they're saying, and remember that other organizations may be listening to that conversation too. So it's a conversation you're having that also has someone, you know, outside people observing that conversation. And if they feel comfortable or are interested in what you're talking about, they're likely to join in too. So that type of awareness is important. And the social media toolkit has some worksheets that can help you with that. So what you're seeing here, this is part of section 2, um, is really about segmenting and targeting. And this comes from modern marketing theory. Um, Basically, the thought is that you know that your community exists in this certain geographic area and maybe you serve certain types of people. But even within that block group, there are segments of more specific types of people that you might not even know exist. And so a way to find that is through surveying your community with some standard questions, or by even looking in your social media accounts, looking at your analytics and trying to figure that out based on trends that you see. And so the idea is that you might have 3 distinct segments within that larger group, and that can help you really fine tune your communications and make sure that you're really connecting with the type of people who are actually in your community and not just the ones that you imagine are in your community, which are sometimes different, subtly different things. And what's really helpful, and this is another worksheet, is to take those segments that you define and to turn them into, in marketing called archetypes, right? So these are like a personification of data. Like we don't want to just have people existing as numbers. We want to remember that they're real people. And by fleshing out this data through a Mad Libs type of form like this, we can create kind of a archetypal person from our community that represents the average of certain segments. And some people might choose to actually use the stories of real people that we work with in place of these segments. But for more, you know, larger, more ambiguous types of data sets, you might humanize it this way. And so, you know, when you're writing a post, for example, and you're about to post it onto social media, you can look at the 3 different archetypes that represent the subsegments from your community and consider how the post will connect with each of those 3 people. It really makes a big difference in tailoring your communications. So that's on the you know, that's on the community side of your of the communication. On the other end is you, the communicator, right? So you know, it's good to ask yourself, who are you? Are you more like a funny friend? You know, more of a teacher, more of a warrior? You know, it's important to personify your organization and build relationships around a consistent type of character, right? This also helps you brand your voice. And, you know, that creates a sticky, consistent presence online. And, you know, it helps people know what to expect when you're posting. You know, it helps people to share what you do with their friends. Like, say you're trying to be funny, they can say, hey, follow this account. These guys are really funny. I think you'll, you know, it'll lift your day. You know, you can always sneak in some campaigns or, you know, raise some issues through those means. But it's just as effective being a teacher. You know, you see people who follow accounts that just have daily life affirmations or wise sayings. Those can be just as rewarding for people. But the main thing is that you're offering value, right? And branding your organization. And this worksheet also in the second section can help you just define that type of voice. And in this process, you really want to be asking yourself, what makes my group unique? How do I add value to the lives of community members? And this is really important, right? We don't want to just be pitching stuff at people, right? It's like, if you think about social media as a group conversation, it's almost like a dinner party or something, right? You have a whole bunch of people talking, going in and out of conversations. If you have an interesting conversation, people will glob onto that. But you don't want to be that guy at the party who's just going around selling people stuff, using it as an opportunity to sign them into Avon or some kind of, sales pitch. That guy is going to be quickly ignored. So really think about how you're adding real value, right? And then think about who relies on you and what for, and make sure that you maintain a consistent presence for those people so that they can continue relying on you in the future. Okay, so the next major step is assessing the landscape, and that's both internal and external. This is before you start, just going crazy with posting, right? This is to create strategy. So start external, right? We want to assess the competitive landscape. And, a lot of these ideas come from the business world, competition rules, and, you're trying to sell more than your competitors. But in the nonprofit world and, in the types of projects, community projects that we offer, we're really looking more for partners. We're looking for how can we work with other people in our community or even outside of our community and leverage those assets to maximize the impact that we can make to the people that we serve. So we're looking for partners, how are they similar? How are they different? How can we integrate what they do into what we're doing? Looking at the social media accounts of other organizations that maybe do similar work to what you do, or maybe operate in the same geographic area or serving the same types of communities. What's working for them, and can we use some of that? And what's not working for them, and how can we improve on that, right? And so in section 3, it's all about assessing that landscape of the section 3 of the toolkit. So this is a worksheet that will help you assess the social media platforms of different organizations and record your observations. What you see on screen here is a competitive landscape analysis. This is for an app called Slack. So some of you might have used Slack. It's a really cool, it's basically a chat app that you can use to facilitate team projects. Pretty simple, but very effective. So they've considered their competition based on this petal Venn diagram format. And so you can see that, on the left there's some other groups who've done task management, and that's part of Slack, but not all they do. There's also this, business communication and chat, right? You might have heard of WhatsApp there. And then in the intersection between business and task management, they've identified another competitor called Asana, right? And in the mix of all these things is where they lie. And so thinking about something like this can help you really identify new types of partners, but also consider strategies from maybe other industries or lines of service that maybe you've never really looked at before. Next, you want to really mine your internal landscape. So, this really starts by auditing your current platforms. A lot of us have social media accounts that exist but haven't really been used much. You might have a young person who created a Facebook account for us 5 years ago, for example, but maybe it hasn't been updated in the last year. The first thing you want to check is, do you even have the passwords or administrative rights to access and run this account? Then you also want to look at, is it still effective? If it's been penalized for inactivity, then you might want to create something new, or maybe it's not really set up the right way, and you want to, change to something that's more effective. And then, do you have a lot of followers there? If you do have a lot of people who are currently following your page, then that might be a reason to reactivate it. And then, of course, just like the external assessment, what's working and what's not working. So we have another worksheet that'll help you audit your existing accounts, pretty similar to the external assessment, except this includes places to, place your passwords, to write down who's already, authorized to administer the account and whatnot. So, before we move on, I just wanted to go through a quick case study, just to show you on the back end, what the benefits are to running a Facebook account or, other social media account for your organization. And this comes from my previous life before I started as the technical assistant specialist here in the ANA Pacific Region TTA Center. I worked as a journalist and a publisher, and part of that was running a magazine that was written for and by the Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian communities, called Mana Magazine. And so we had a pretty hefty online presence, and a lot of these stats are from, or all of these stats are kind of from a snapshot in time of social media insights that we got from Facebook there. So what you'll see here on screen is some basic social media insights, and these are available to anyone with a social media page. Right away we can see that we had 10,000 total page likes in the last week. The snapshot of our fans, we can see that 73% of them were women. So this is pretty surprising for us when we're working there. And you can see this clear curve, which peaks here at the 35 to 44-year-old women. So that was an example of a segment that we hadn't realized, was in our larger community that we served. So it's something that we can really consider moving forward. So you could also see insights regarding the types of content that you post. So quickly we can see that in this week, and this was a particularly high week, right? This is 1 week of time. We reached 669,000 people, which was huge, 330% increase over the previous week. And what we could see was that, there was this interesting, there was this interesting peak here, a huge peak, up 40,000 likes. And so we were trying to look at why was this the case? And we realized that it was because of two specific events that were happening that month. One was the Merry Monarch Hula Festival, which is a big dance competition and showcase that's pretty renowned. And then the other was the coverage of some protests that were happening on the mountain, on Mauna Kea, one of our largest mountains, where a telescope was being proposed to be built on sacred land. And so a lot of people were coming to the site to view that. And we could see that verified in our actual published posts. And so this is something you can see as well in your accounts, that the top post we had here was about just some statistics on the mountain itself, and people were looking to that to try and read more, to get context on the news they were seeing in the main media. And we can see that here, that the way that they engaged with it was by clicking on the content and reading the actual story, right? So 5,000 people to this blue line here. It's all about people clicking on it and reading it. And we can also see that this was all a huge reach. Reached 97,000 people, which was huge. And it was, if you look deeper, you can see that it wasn't just people from Hawaii. It was people from all over the world. The second highest post was about the new Miss Aloha Hula, who was the individual woman who won the individual competition at the Merry Monarch competition. Very different type of engagement. We can see here that 4.9 thousand people would just liked, commented, and shared, and far fewer people were actually clicking into the story. So really what it was like, it was a photo of someone saying, congratulations, this person won. You could click on something for more information, but people weren't engaging with it that way. They're really just sharing the photo of that person all around social media, saying, hey, this is my cousin, I'm so proud that she won, or oh, look how beautiful she was in this dress, or something like that, right? There's people just sharing the photo. So pretty interesting to see, how they interact, and, to tailor what you do accordingly. And so to fine tune what you're doing, it can be really useful to consider a survey, right? Surveying people. And what I mean is like an offline, in-person survey like this person is doing in the photo there. It can be used early to assess community demographics and preferences, to really define what type of social media your communities already use, so that, if you find out that you might think that your community uses Facebook primarily, but surveying them can lead to finding out that they actually are all on Twitter. So, imagine if you didn't survey them, you just put all your effort into Facebook and are just wondering why no one's interacting. You probably should have been starting with Twitter in the first place. And it can be used later to correlate results with social media campaigns. So, you can, survey people offline and see if those survey results match up, just for data fidelity. And a really simple way to do that is, if you're the type of organization that operates projects or events, then you can set up a booth, just survey people as they come in, for ANA's purposes. Make sure to qualify each of them as native or, from your primary community to be served. And that, that's usually better than a SurveyMonkey or online type of survey, although those can be very useful as well. So within the social media toolkit, back to the toolkit, we have a worksheet that can help you survey those things, or build a questionnaire to survey social media habits. But it's also an example of just how to construct a good questionnaire in general. You want to avoid yes or no questions. Using Likert scales is great. Basically, a Likert scale is, saying from 1 through 5, how would you rate this thing, right? So going back to our case study, we did a survey to find out, more about how our people were reading content online. The first screen actually asked people, are you a current subscriber? And depending on whether they answered yes or no, we would lead them to one of 2 different paths of a different survey path. And this was created with Google Forms, which is part of the Google Docs or Google Drive suite. So it's totally free. Anyone can do this. But we found that by creating a simple giveaway contest, that our return rates just like skyrocketed, like 500%. And this is just like a $50 gift card to a local restaurant that was donated to us. So it didn't cost us anything, but it got a huge return. And of course, here you can see the Likert scales as well, or, here 1 through 5, no yes or no questions. And we're really trying to avoid leading people to this predefined answer. We don't want to be trying to just convince people to affirm the idea that we came up with in our office, right? We want to actually be responding to real feedback and, responding to the real needs of our community, not trying to project ours onto them. So these were our results, 448 total responses. We found out that, it has a pretty even split between subscribers and non-subscribers, which was really good for us. Subscribers to teach us how to give them more of what they want, and non-subscribers to, figure out how we can get them to come in. We found out that women ages 38 to 55 was our primary demographic, which really aligns almost perfectly with the Facebook statistics, which help to confirm that as our primary target segment. Only 49% were part Hawaiian, ethnically Hawaiian, and so that was kind of eye-opening for us as well. That defined a second segment that we hadn't thought of. The non-Hawaiian community who's trying to listen in and be a good ally for our Native community, and that really, was a big eye-opener in terms of the types of content that we might focus. Of course, we still have our primary focus on our Native community, but this is a good opportunity to build partnerships in the community as well. So we also found out, what people thought about the magazine, subtle differences, but Mana is a magazine about Hawaiian culture came up as #1. And so, that was helped us to fine tune things. Also, we were able to rank at people's editorial preferences. So we found that history and culture was #1, which we kind of thought, but that news and investigative reporting was #2. That was pretty eye-opening as well, and really helped us to allocate resources to more of that breaking news, investigative reporting type of stuff that people were looking for. So that provides you a lot of data that you can use to not only respond to people online, but to tailor the actual programs that we offer in our general operations. So social media is more than just responding to tweets and stuff. It's actual business and nonprofit intelligence. So once we're ready to post, after we have that strategy created, we want to consider a few things, right? So there's paid versus earned media. Basically, earned media is where you are earning the exposure, right? That you're not paying for placement, but you're actually putting out regular, fresh, interesting content that people are willing to share because of its own merits. But for some people, it might be useful to leverage paid media as well. These social media platforms make money through ads, and the reason why people are advertising on social media versus traditional media nowadays is because social media allows you to target just those individuals who you're interested in. So you could choose on Facebook, for example, to have your ads seen only by individuals ages 30 and under from your specific geographic area who are interested in dance and video games. You can get that granular with your targeting if you want, and you'll only pay for those people who see it. And so, it is a good targeted use, but of course you'll have to look at the limitations of grant funding if you're going to be spending that money, if advertising is allowable, and the cost and benefit analysis to doing something like that, right? You also want to make sure that you have photos and videos to accompany things. Just plain text is not as effective as something that is accompanied by multimedia. And so you need to, also have the resources to generate that media. And then just remember that you're co-creating value with your audience, that it's only worth something if they want it, and that you can actually listen to their feedback and use that to create something that's going to pose more value to your audience, better, more fine-tuned content, stuff like that. And of course, consistency is key. If you stop posting for a month, the social media platform, just like Google, will flag you as inactive and start penalizing your position accordingly. So people will be less likely to see your content if you're not consistently posting new and fresh content. So there are a series of worksheets in the toolkit that you can use. One that we like is this idea of content carts, and some other people call this bins. So the idea is that you're trying to avoid burnout, right? If you just every day sit down on your computer fresh and just try to come up with something randomly, number one, it'll take a lot of time. It'll take hours of each day. And number two is that you're more likely to post something that doesn't lead to some strategic end goal, right? So this helps to avoid burnout of, just trying to do it every day from scratch, and also allows you to stockpile some evergreen content that you can drip out and push over time, so that you can stockpile stuff and then let it go. And this particular format also has the added benefit of allowing you to leverage the expertise of elders. And so, a lot of times in our organizations and our communities, we have access to these amazing, wise, knowledgeable elders who just have so much knowledge that we want to share and also internalize into our own organization. But a lot of times social media is not seen as a place to leverage their expertise because they might not be so comfortable with technology, new technologies. And I know there are many though who I know who are super active on social media. So that's not to generalize, but this may not be the first thing we think of. So this example here is showing us, this might be an organization that works with native health, for example, and they're trying to have traditional methods for healing. So in this content cart, this might be an evergreen campaign. So not really time sensitive. This is information that can be released at any time, right? It's always going to be relevant. In this case, practical uses for indigenous plants. This might be, how to make traditional medicines. And so you might have a young person who's running your social media accounts, who's really good with all the technical stuff, but the staff expert on call for this particular campaign is an elder. And so that young person can sit down with that elder, interview them, learn from them, and pre-write, 5 to 10 different posts about each of these little tidbits of information that they're getting from that elder. Of course, the elder would know which types of information is okay to share outside of our families and communities, and which ones, maybe should not be shared outside. But in addition to leveraging their wisdom for the external communities, you're also institutionalizing that wisdom by pairing a young person, tech-savvy person, with this elder, facilitating that intergenerational knowledge transfer, and hopefully that young person becomes a leader in the organization later, and now has a lot of that knowledge, firsthand knowledge from the elder. So, an added benefit to this approach. Once you have all those carts set up with different types of content, then you want to place them into a specific campaign and that's objective driven. So this is really where all the different pieces that we set up in the earlier chapters of the toolkit come together towards action. Remember, we talked about how to create a good objective, right? It's not just all likes and shares. It's about having meaningful metrics that make sense to your organization and to your projects. What we see here is expose 25 or more community members to healthy lifestyles and drive 10 RSVPs for our August health education session. And we find that that cart that we were looking at with cart number 1 about indigenous plants is there, but we also have relevant content from carts 3 and 4. And so as you look down the list, and this, for those of you who've written ANA grants before, this resembles the OWP, Objective Work Plan. It's another type of work plan. You can see that, there's the type of post, who on the staff is going to be in charge of posting that. So, you could have multiple people running your social media accounts as well. And of course, it's good to have a backup person. The next column is date, when you're going to be posting that. And then you have your target metric that is platform specific, right? So likes, views, clicks, but those things really only have relevance when they are viewed through the lens of an objective that is aligned with the work you actually do. So this is the work plan that can help you carry out social media and outreach campaigns. And finally, the last section, section 5 of the toolkit, is all about tracking, analyzing, and improving. So using data and looking at what works and what doesn't work and what kinds of people are interacting with your content, and using that information to improve what you're doing and constantly get better. And so, plan, do, check, act. This cycle of constant improvement is something that, we should integrate into all of our operations. But the data from social media, as we saw in the case study, really makes that a lot easier and a lot more specific and strategic. And so this includes a basic worksheet about, what's been working, what hasn't been working, and what can I do to improve based on what I've seen. Just a super basic worksheet, but something that's good, a good checklist to keep, your mind in order as you're analyzing what you've done. And so that's a general overview of the toolkit. What we saw today was, section 1 on defining your purpose. Why are you doing all of this, right? Not just because everyone else is doing it, but because there are specific outcomes that can benefit our communities and our organization. Section 2 about getting to know your communities, whether that's through surveys or analyzing the social media accounts of your community members or just talking with them. Section 3 is about mapping the landscape, both external, looking at that competitive landscape, looking for partnerships, what are they doing well, what can we integrate, and also internal, what accounts do we have currently made? Do we have the passwords and rights to access them? What's working and what's not working? And then finally, in section 4, crafting that posting strategy based on a campaign and putting that into a work plan to integrate that into our existing workflow without burning out our staff, right? Something that we can sustain. And then finally, using data to constantly improve what we're doing. So all of this can be found in our ANA Outreach and Social Media Toolkit, which is now available online. That's going to be in ANA's website, in their resource library. So if you go to ANA's website, and I'll have more on this as we close out, but you go to ANA's website, click on resource library in the navigation bar, and search for Social Media Toolkit there, and you'll find it. Currently, it's pinned to the homepage, but as new things get added, those new things will be pinned. So just search for Social Media Toolkit. You'll be able to also, once this webinar is recorded, refer back to the webinar recording as a accompaniment to the activities and worksheets found in that toolkit. So at this time, I'm going to open up the room for a Q&A. All of our questions will be submitted through the question box on the right side of your screen, and I'll answer them in the order they were received. So the first question that I have comes from Phil Preston. Phil asks, I missed how this survey was distributed. So how would you distribute a survey? And that's a good point, Phil. Let's see. So there's two primary ways to submit, to do a survey or to survey your community, right? One would be in paper or in person. So this would be, I think, like a good way to think about it is like, so you have a community event, like a potlatch, powwow, workshop, some type of performance. And as people are coming in, you take a random sampling of people aside, ask them to fill out your survey, and then just have that paper survey ready, filed somewhere for analysis after the event is done. Just make sure that you qualify the people who are answering as part of the relevant community, right? That usually works a lot better, just like the online survey, if you offer some type of prize giveaway, right? Like if you say, okay, here, take a survey, and then you'll get a raffle ticket if you take the survey. And then at the end of this event today, then we're going to raffle off some things that maybe you got donated from board members or community members. That really helps a lot. Online, the example that I showed earlier, that was created with Google Forms. So in Google Drive, the Google Docs suite of products, which is completely free, you just need like a Gmail account. You can create one of these free surveys or questionnaires and distribute that as a link, through your social media accounts or through your email listserv. Just make sure that if you're soliciting feedback for a survey that people have opted into that, because you can get in trouble for emailing people who didn't opt into receiving those emails. And some of the people like SurveyMonkey or other third-party survey platforms that are free as well. So I have another question from Nohealani Hirahara, who is asking, is there anyone we can hire that provides these posts on Island? And yes, you can hire people, and if you look online, you can find a lot of social media experts. But I think if you're gonna hire someone, first of all, really consider doing it in-house first. It's smaller organizations might not have the budget to sustain that type of contract for social media people, but sometimes you can find that, or maybe your organization can't afford that. Personally, I think if you're going to be hiring a consultant to help you with your social media campaigns, the main thing that you want to be looking for is to see that this person is actually so the first thing I would say is like make sure that they're actually data driven, that their strategies are actually based on analytics, insights, on data and numbers, and they're not just saying, oh, I think you should use these types of sunset photos because they're really cool, right? Like it's not about a matter of taste, it's a matter of them responding to actual data. I think the other thing is making sure that they keep up to date with social media news. So maybe before you go interview a consultant, go look on Google News and see what the latest social media happenings are, and then ask them if they're familiar with that, something like that. Okay, so I have another question about can you comment on outreach strategies for smaller populations and aging demographics? I think that for smaller populations, especially if they're in one geographic area, that can actually be a major strength, right? Because it's easier to gather people in one place. Or you could actually do a door-to-door knocking campaign, go door to door and talk to people, and like the benefit is that you can establish real face-to-face, meaningful human connections with people. And whereas like an organization who's doing a national audience, for example, might be forced to use more of a statistics-based approach. So that's definitely something good, and that definitely also helps with aging demographics. In terms of non-social media outreach, if that's what you mean by like the aging demographics, one thing is to contact their families. A lot of times, if the help that we offer to our aging, to our elders, should be supported by families. Whether or not that it can always happen is a different story, but if we can engage the whole family together, then that might be, a way to address the systemic issues that are facing our elders. And so, social media might be a way to facilitate those types of conversations. Next, we have a question from Robert about, as Facebook is currently in the news for selling user data, what do you think the effect will be for smaller nations that use social media marketing, that use Facebook for its social media marketing and outreach? So I think that's a great question, and there are like two schools of thought with this, right? I guess like one would say that like, okay, these organizations are selling data and we want to retain our privacy, and therefore we should look for some other option. But unfortunately, like the guys who, the social media platforms that are most used by people are also driven by selling data to run more targeted ads. And so that's the nature of the agreement. In this case, like, sometimes maybe they're pushing the line of the agreement that you made. Most people don't read the fine print when they sign up for an account anyway. But I think that's part of the trade-off, right? Is social media is you get to use your services for free in order for them to use your data. Um, from an organizational perspective, we can choose what information we put out there and be strategic with that so that we're not revealing information about our organizations, but really we don't want to be revealing, but really we're trying to get people where they already are. So if people start leaving Facebook as a result of some news item like this, then we're not really going to be, especially if they're from our community, then that's not a place that we're going to really want to put a lot of our resources into anymore, right? So we're really just worried about the community, what they're actually using, and responding to that. And that's the reason to constantly look at data and improve. And sometimes that's another reason why you want to do surveys and distribute your questionnaire outside of the social media platform, because sometimes it's just an echo chamber that's just confirming, the people who are using Facebook are going to tell you that Facebook is best, but they might just represent a tiny subsegment of the broader community that's online. So, another reason to do surveys outside of the platform. I have a question. Oh, what does evergreen mean? And thank you for asking that. I did not explain that. So in a couple of the worksheets in the toolkit, you'll see a difference between evergreen content and timely content, right? So evergreen is that's a term that's like in publishing, right? Like, say you have a newspaper, and you have every day in the newspaper you have news stories that are only going to be relevant that day, and so you need to publish it that day. So if you have a really heavy news day, then you might have to fill 60% of your newspaper with this very timely stuff, right? But evergreen content, on the other hand, is content that could be published at any time. Like maybe it's a profile on the newly elected mayor, right? Like you wrote up something about him. So you just got to post it like sometime in the next 2 or 3 months, but the specific day doesn't really matter. So on a slow news day, that's when you might put in that story about the mayor. So like on the TV news, a lot of times you'll see like some story about some cats wearing funny costumes or something. That's an example of an evergreen story that they're putting in there to fill the slow news day. But stockpiling evergreen content allows you to always have something to post so that you can keep your content fresh, so that the social media platform doesn't penalize you for inactivity. And then those times where you actually have things to say, then you do that. The other part of it is that you don't want to be just only posting stuff when you need something from people, right? Like, oh, we need more people to sign up for our workshop, so we're going to just keep posting about, please sign up for our workshop, please sign up for our workshop. Like if you're not offering content of actual value to your community, they're going to kind of tune you out. So this evergreen content that actually offers value, like recipes or exercise ideas, that offers value, so that when you do have to ask for something, people don't feel like you're just, the needy cousin or something. Okay, next question. Thoughts on bots? Yeah, I mean, bots, scammers, phishers, hackers, like all these people who try to prey on your, personal information, can be really difficult. Most social media platforms, like the bots, like the actually fully automated bots, are, usually like policed pretty well. But people out there will always find new ways to trick the system. So, it's just about reporting it in a timely manner and dealing with it as it comes. Nothing really you can do about that. I think bots have more of impact on websites, and that's nowadays it's some people argue whether you even need a website at all or not. I think it's a good place to you know centralize all of your content, or you can link to your website and back. But for most people, I think social media has become the hub anyway. But yeah, just make sure that you report things that are fishy. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for our Q&As. So thank you everyone for your questions. I just wanted to point you before we end to our next webinar, which will be the first of 2019. Sorry there, I know it says 2018, but this should be 2019, on human trafficking awareness. And that'll be hosted by the ANA Alaska region, and you can register at their website, www.anaalaska.org, featuring a staff member at the Office on Trafficking in Persons. So, I know a big issue in a lot of our communities. So with that, I just want to point you one last time to the ANA Outreach and Social Media Toolkit. It's there on their resource library, which you can find on their website, www.acf.hhs.gov/ANA/resource library, or just go to the ANA website and click on the resource library tab in the navigation bar. Available for download now. And if you have any questions about this, please email me. You can contact me through our website at www.anapacificbasin.org. Once again, my name is Matthew Ng. I am the Technical Assistance Specialist in the ANA Pacific region, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have in the future about this toolkit. But please let me know if you have any feedback. I'd be happy to integrate that into future iterations of the toolkit as well. But thank you for your time. Mahalo, thank you for joining us. And at this time, I'll be ending the webinar.